Last week we talked about what to really consider when pricing yourself as a new photographer and reframing your mindset as a business owner rather than just a photographer. And so you stop blurting out just a random number when somebody says, "So what do you charge?" Doing the math from last week's episode is an excellent way to start, but having confidence in those numbers is a whole other ball game, and that's what we're diving into today. This is part 2, where we look at what others are charging, how your work stacks up, how to figure out where you fit into the market, and how to use all of that to level up your pricing with confidence. Hey guys, welcome along, and if this is the first time that YouTube's introducing us, my name's Tracy from Red and the Wolf Photography and Design, and today's episode can be a standalone video, but it's designed to follow on from last week's video on how to price your photography as a beginner. So if you haven't watched that one, I'll put the link up here somewhere. And I've just got a super quick announcement today. I just want to say a massive thank you to everybody that has been part of this channel. I've just hit 1,000 subscribers and I'm feeling pretty humbled and pretty grateful. So thank you to all of you that have liked and subscribed on this channel and shared it out a little bit further. And I'm super grateful to all the people that leave comments and all the conversations that we have. And anyway, back to today's content. So by the end of this video, I want you to feel genuinely confident about your pricing. So you're not sitting there wondering to yourself, is this even right? Am I charging like a total amateur, or am I being completely unrealistic? Because that's what causes the uncertainty in your gut and causes you to say, oh, I'll just charge $50, it'll be fine, instead of a proper, considered professional rate. So how are we going to accomplish this? We're going to do it by understanding the professional landscape around us. We're going to be looking at what other photographers in your niche are charging and offering, and doing a little competitor analysis on those and others in your local area. So for me, for instance, my local zone is Waikato and Auckland areas, but my full zone for research would probably be the entirety of New Zealand, because the prices don't really differ a lot because we're a pretty small country. But for instance, if you lived in the States, you might want to find other photographers within your state that are doing the niche of photography that you want to be doing, or maybe look at even some of the neighboring states. So how far you want to go out geographically for your research is really completely up to you. So we're going to start by finding around about a dozen photographers within our niche and within our geographic location. And I suggest that you do around about 10 to a dozen, because you don't want to do just a couple, and you also don't want to be spending the next 6 months doing research. So what we're going to be doing is a really simple audit. This is beginner level marketing 101 competitor analysis. And this is not so that we can copy our competitors. This is so we can understand where we sit within the professional landscape. Again, coming back to the concept that we're now a photography business, not just a photographer. Now, I've got all of this in today's free download, which actually covers both last week's video and today's video, which will be linked in the description below. So make sure that you grab that so that you can follow along or follow up after the video. And for those of you that have already done marketing, this is basically a SWOT analysis that we're going to reframe within the photography landscape. Now, I suggest you get out some lined paper or print out the free page from this PDF. And on the top of each page, you're going to be writing the name of the photography business or the photographer, plus their website. So if you ever want to go back and re-reference the information, you know who you got it from. And I suggest that you do this one business at a time. Now, right now, I'm getting into wedding photography, so I'm going to be using wedding photography as today's reference. But you can do the exact same exercise across any niche of photography that you want to. And if you're like me and you want to be in multiple niches, I suggest that you do the same exercise across all of those niches. So once you go into Google and pull up the top dozen that come up, what you're going to do is go through and find their pricing and their offers. Now, I say the first dozen on Google because whether or not you like them, they're on the front page of Google. Whether that's because of organic search traffic or good SEO, or because they've paid for advertising. Either which way, they're running their business like a business. And this is essentially what your prospective clients are also going to be seeing if they're typing up the same search term that you are. So for instance, I would start with Waikato wedding photographer or Auckland wedding photographer, and that's going to bring up the top in my area. And this is what you're going to be measuring yourself against. And I'm not saying like whether or not you're better or worse. Once again, this is just to get a really realistic look at where you're fitting into the current business landscape. You might find that your photography is below all of them, but You might actually surprise yourself and find out that your photography sits nicely in the middle, or your photography sits at the top. So it's an excellent exercise to go through and figure out kind of where you fit in. So we're not looking for direct competitors of other wedding photographers that have the exact same photography and editing style as you. We're simply looking at the wedding photography market as a whole. Now, if you're doing weddings, you'll probably come across something like this. They'll have 3 or 4 packages. Tier 1 will be the lowest tier, and that'll be like for 4 hours, 400 photos edited, 1 photographer, and it might cost $1,800. Tier 2 might be a full day wedding, which might be 8 to 10 hours, about 800 edited photos, 1 photographer, and it might cost $3,000. And Tier 3, which is normally quite a bit higher than the others, normally has extra stuff on top of a full day wedding, where they might include a free engagement session, they might include a deluxe wedding album, they might include a second shooter, they might include a videographer, and that's going to be closer to the $5,000 mark. This is kind of the standard way that most wedding photographers approach this, and actually I've found that a lot of photographers approach this where they have different packages available. And then on top of that, they might have an additional a la carte menu where you can add on extra stuff, like if you wanted a second photographer, if you wanted a videographer, if you wanted prints, if you wanted that deluxe album on top of your package. So understand that you're probably looking for tiers and then an additional menu. Or maybe they'll do something completely different that really appeals to you in the way that you want to do business. But the idea here is to list them out so that you can see them in front of you and take any good ideas that you like, or make any notes about, I don't really like the way these guys do it, but I love the way these guys do it. For instance, some photographers will provide, let's say they're doing family photography, they might provide a what to wear guide, and it's just a free PDF download. So they make it once, but that's an additional thing that they're giving away for free that makes it look like the package is more valuable. And for somebody that has never done family photography before and they're like, oh my gosh, what do I put my kids in? This might be something that solves a really specific problem, and they're going to be like, I'm going to go with this photographer because I feel like they're just telling me everything I need to know and I don't have to think about it. And if you're looking at the wedding market, it might be a list of local vendors. So if somebody's coming from out of town, or you guys live in somewhere like Queenstown where you have people maybe eloping there and you've got the mountains and it's not a lot of locals, there's a lot of people coming in for tourist weddings, then something like that also might be really valuable for them. So think about your market and what else you could offer. So step 1, prices and packages, and make any extra notes that you want to as you're going. A SWOT analysis is the absolute bare bones of what you need as a business to get started, along with obviously understanding pricing and packaging. SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and this is a really basic marketing 101. Now I know that you guys are probably really busy and you've got kids to pick up from school or dinner to put on, so what we're going to do is keep it as simple as possible. And I have made up this little book so that you guys can do this at your leisure when you're ready and just keep adding to it and keep everything all in one place. So let's just start by explaining what a SWOT analysis is and exactly what you're looking for. Number 1 is strengths. What do you like about this photographer? What do you love about them that a potential client might? And make sure to have a look through both their website and maybe even their socials for a more complete analysis. Number 2 is their weaknesses. It's the same as their strengths obviously, but the opposite. They might have gorgeous photos, but not be very good at making a website, for example, so their first impression isn't that great. Or it could be the exact opposite. Maybe they have a really nice website and not so great photos. Number 3 is opportunities. What could you spot that you could use to your advantage? What gaps in the market are they missing out on, or things that you could exploit? Are there any trends they're missing out on? And lastly, threats. What makes this photographer a strong competitor? What could feel challenging or intimidating to try and match? Now, as I said, I'll list a bunch of things in the freebie if you're not entirely sure what you're looking for. And depending on how much time you have, you can go as shallow or as deep as you want in this research. Right now, it's really about understanding the lay of the land so that you understand where you fit with your photography. And even if you're charging half of what the industry standard is, you can at least explain that confidently to your clients as to why that's the case. In a video I've got coming up in a couple of weeks, I'm actually going to be going over some client objections and how to address these. Because half the reason that we charge so little for our photography is that we don't actually understand our value. I mean, would you walk into McDonald's and say, I haven't really done this before, it's okay if you like only pay me $2 an hour? Of course you wouldn't. You would at the very least expect minimum wage. So understanding what the worth of your services is, and I want to be very clear here, I'm not talking about your personal worth, I'm talking about the worth of the service that you provide, is essential in having the confidence to be able to articulate the prices and why you're charging the prices that you are. Now here's the harder bit. I want you to look through your work and their work and consider it. As in, if you can bring up some of your photography on half of your screen and some of their photography on the other half of the screen, and actually take a real look at how they look side by side. This exercise is not designed to be a comparison of their editing styles or their storytelling skills against yours. The idea of this exercise is to get honest with yourself. Are their photos technically better or worse than yours? And I say this for a really simple reason. I like dark and moody photos. I like taking them, I like looking at them. So if I was looking for a photographer, I'm not going to be looking at somebody that's light and airy. What I am going to be looking for is somebody that is proficient in the dark and moody styles. So what I'm saying is that your style will appeal to somebody for no reason other than it's something that they like. Okay, so the only thing that you have to compete in that is whether or not your photos are technically good enough against anything else. Because as soon as you are technically good enough to be in that top tier of photographers, at that point the prices aren't really a differentiator. At that point, they're going to be looking, what style do I like the most? Which photographer do I connect to the most? So the questions that they start asking at this top tier are completely different to the questions that they ask at this bottom tier of how much do you cost, right? So the technical elements of whether or not your photography is good enough to be in that top tier of photographers, that's what we're trying to figure out today. Now, depending on how deep you want to go, and I've included a whole list of 20 different things that you can look for technically to compare your photos to the ones that you're seeing. Now, you might also find that you come across a photographer that you absolutely love, but their technical skills are nothing to rave about. So make a note of that if you want to within your research. But generally speaking, most photographers do follow some basic rules. They have their lighting correct and their aperture right and their rule of thirds or good composition, sharpness, focus, that kind of thing. Those are the kind of elements that you need to be looking for when comparing apples with apples. Oh, and the other thing is apples with apples. So if you're doing wedding photography outside on a beach, try and compare your images to another photographer that's done wedding photos out on a beach. Because if you've taken photos in a church and they're out on a beach, you've got completely different lighting setups and everything else, which is going to make it really hard to compare your photos. Same goes for if you're outside in the middle of the day, which is the only types of weddings I've done so far. They've all been outside, so I've been battling with the sun changing and clouds coming over and trees and things like that. If I tried to compare that to somebody that got married, married in a barn, where there was a completely different lighting setup, you can't even compare those two. So make sure that you try and find photographers that have done some stuff that are similar to yours. So even if you compare yourself or your technical abilities against 3 or 4 of them, you can really start to understand where you can level up or whether or not that you're already even Stevens with them. But the entire purpose of this exercise is to be truly honest with yourself, because even if you go, my stuff isn't as good as them. That's where I'm sitting right now. I'm looking at my photography and I'm going, right, I've taken some really cool photos that I'm really, really proud of. But when it comes to weddings, my photos in one gallery are normally fairly consistent. They look like they belong to the same photographer the same day, etc., etc. I use similar presets so that the gallery looks fairly cohesive. But because I've done all outside ones, all at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I've got the sun coming down, it's coming through the trees. Every wedding that I've done so far has dappled shadows on their faces, which means that I've had to lift the highlights and pull down the shadows and compress the colors sort of. So I haven't been able to do the exact editing style that I want, and I'm still not sure what I'm doing wrong there. So even though my entire gallery still looks good, it's not excellent. So I think that me charging half of what is the industry standard at this point in time until I get a bit technically better is an excellent place for me to start, but I also feel really confident I can absolutely shoot a wedding. So really being honest with yourself about, okay, I can do this, but I'm struggling here, or I can do this, but I've got this much to improve upon before I feel like I'm at this tier. So go and compare yourself to a couple of other photographers, and remember, it's not a popularity contest. It's just about understanding where you fit now, moving into a professional business photographer. But also, don't feel overwhelmed by this. Like, we all start somewhere. All of those amazing photographers all started somewhere, right? And you're probably not going to see it on their website because they've probably taken down all their old ones. And lastly, understand that if you're at the point that you're wanting to take your photography to a professional level, you're probably fairly proficient. If you're put in any photography situation, you could probably get a solid shot. Maybe it's not something to rave about, but you've got the basics and you can do a good job. So when I'm talking to prospective clients, I tell them exactly where I'm at. I say to them that I'm a proficient photographer, but that there's nuances and flow with every different niche of photography that I'm still learning about. So while I can guarantee a proficiency level, I can't guarantee amazingness at this point. But I never lie to prospective clients. I never say I'm more than I am. I always say, go and check out my website, and if you like the work that I have on my website, then we can talk. I'm not a complete newbie, but I'm also not an expert, which is why I charge about a third to a half of industry standard while I'm still getting up my experience. Now let's flip it. Let's say that you were looking to be a client for somebody and you were looking through all the photographers that were available to you. Who would you pick? Now take finances out of it. Just pretend that money's not an option. Which one of them would you pick and why? Was it their editing, their storytelling, the vibe of their brand? Or did they just come across as friendly or fun on their website? And then if that's what you love, how does your brand and your work compare to theirs? It's such an interesting lens to look through because then you're kind of taking yourself out of the picture in some ways and putting yourself aside and just being able to look at it through the lens of a client. And I think it truly highlights what you value as a photographer. And it might also reveal some gaps to you about what you're missing in your online presence. And it's just taking it that one step further, not just looking at the landscape as a whole, but understanding where you would like to be within that landscape. So make sure that you grab the free download because I do go into a bit more detail in there. And in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be doing a video around client objections to pricing. So I'd love to hear from you guys what objections that you've had from prospective clients or clients that you ended up landing, or what you've heard people complain about when they've been looking to hire a photographer, or just as important, what excuses do you come up with when you're trying to talk yourself out of charging what you really should be worth? Because truth be told, half of the objections live in our own minds when we first get started. Now remember, you don't need to be perfect to just get started, but you do need to be honest about where you are and then use that as a map from where you are to where you want to go. Use it to grow smarter and price your work with confidence. And if you've got to the end of this video, as always, if you could do the YouTube things, like, subscribe, it just lets YouTube know to pass this out to a few more people that might be interested in it. And I will see you guys in the next video.